U.S. forces lowering their flag today in Afghanistan. That's a ceremonial end to combat missions in the country since, well, 13 years ago in the attacks of 9/11. This all comes amid an eye-opening report showing that America's military men and women are facing a growing crisis of morale. Pete Hegseth, Fox News contributor, CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. How are you, Pete? Good morning to you there.
Good morning, Bill.
In Minneapolis. MilitaryTimes.com writes this now. Today's service members say they feel underpaid, underequipped, and underappreciated. After 13 years of war, the all-volunteer military is entering an era fraught with uncertainty and a growing sense that the force has been left adrift. The reasons for this are what, Pete?
That's right, and it didn't have to be this way. In the poll, in 2009, 91% of active duty military members felt like their quality of life was good or excellent. Today, that number is 56%, just barely north of 50. 5 years later, still after 9/11, it's a crisis of what has occurred under this administration. Listening to a commander-in-chief who's more interested in ending wars than winning them or finishing them properly. Sequestration, which has had a devastating effect on the force across the board, and including pay and squeezing bonuses for troops, and they feel that also. There's also definitely a difficulty in transitioning to garrison life. When you've been on a deployment footing overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan doing your job, it's hard to come home and say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And it's much more difficult to come home and see the legacy of your wars squandered. That's the biggest indictment of this administration.
As we know, such a small percentage of the population in America has fought this war. And so many have not. The military has done this. And now what the poll suggests is that they're worried about the legacy after the wars they've been involved in. What does that mean, Pete?
No, that's exactly right. When you're part of the 1% that was committed to these difficult, contentious, highly politicized battles, all you want is a commander-in-chief leadership that will give you the resources and the morale and the support you need to win and succeed in your mission. Because if you come home and move on to another, you know you committed to something that was worth the sacrifice, worth the blood, worth the treasure. Instead, in Iraq today, you see ISIS raising black flags over towns we fought for, brutality against Christians and American journalists. You see in Afghanistan today, the nominal end to the combat mission, except a resurgent Taliban across that country. And so for veterans of these, I'm not worried about my pay, I'm not worried about my health care. Sure, I want those things to be right. I want to win the wars that I was sent to fight. I want a commander-in-chief to stand up and be resolute in the face of a vicious enemy. And they haven't seen this from President Obama. That is the biggest drain on morale. I really think is the biggest drain on that number.
And a shot to the gut, as you point out, the towns in Iraq that were hard-fought and won. And now the Taliban is on the rise yet again in Afghanistan. On top of that, when you come home, you got the matters of the VA that have disappointed so many.
So that's exactly right. Then you come home and you say, okay, regardless of what happened over there, now I know I'll be treated for, and whether it's the military healthcare system with this Military Times poll talks about, or it's the VA, they're met with wait times, secret lists, bureaucracy, lack of quality care, and a single-payer, top-down government-run healthcare that treats them like a number as opposed to the hero that they are. So across the board, it doesn't surprise me, and I see it running a veterans organization. There is angst and a visceral sense that our country is off the rails, and that's why, veterans and military families are starting to do something about it, building organizations, getting involved to fight for the future of their nation, because their commander-in-chief hasn't done it. Congress sure as heck hasn't done it. It's got to be veterans taking those reins back.
Underpaid, underequipped, and underappreciated. That cannot stand. Pete Hegseth,
No.
thank you, out of Minneapolis today.
Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate it.